My sister flirted with my husband for years, then started dating his cousin in secret, and confessed her love for my husband at their party. 6 years ago, I decided to cut off all communication with my sister, Mindy, after discovering that she constantly flirted with Richard, who was my boyfriend at the time and is now my husband. The worst part was that my parents never seemed to take the matter seriously, treating it as if it were completely normal for my sister to make advances toward the man I was dating. They simply dismissed it as a passing phase. To provide some context, Mindy is my younger sister. In our early years, I do not think she felt as much resentment toward me as she would later develop. In fact, I remember a time when she adored me so much that the idea of being estranged would have seemed impossible. We used to play together all the time, and I was the one who taught her how to ride a bike. However, as we grew up, it became increasingly clear how different our personalities were. Academically, I used to get good grades without much effort, while Mindy struggled more. It was not that she lacked intelligence, but for some reason, studying did not come as easily to her. This became a point of tension at home, since our parents placed a lot of emphasis on grades. Seeing that Mindy did not perform as expected, they constantly compared her to me, using my performance as an example and pressuring her to try harder, as if I were the standard she should live up to. I could see how frustrated this situation made her. And honestly, I understand why she was upset. It must have been very hard to constantly hear that she was not on the same level as her older sister. I tried to talk to her about it and even offered to help her with her homework, but with the constant criticism, she started to drift away from me. Later, during our teenage years, the issue of how we spent our time after school came up. Being more introverted, I preferred to spend my afternoons quietly, studying or reading a book in my room. I felt comfortable in my own company. That is how I have always been. Mindy, on the other hand, was always much more social. She loved going out and spending time with friends. She thrived in social environments, and there was nothing wrong with her wanting to go to parties or school events like prom. It was simply her way of being. However, since I preferred to stay home, our parents used me as an excuse to keep Mindy at home too. They would say things like, "Your sister is home studying, why cannot you do the same?" Or, "If she does not go to parties, why should you?" It was completely unfair to her, and I knew it. I was not bothered by her wanting to go out and have fun, but our parents insisted that I was the example she should follow. This situation only increased her anger. Little by little, she began to take out her frustration on me, calling me boring and lifeless, because I did not have the social life she longed for. I could see how much she resented the restrictions our parents placed on her, but it hurt me that she directed her anger at me. I tried to explain to her that it was not my fault, that I was not the one keeping her home, but since she knew she could not blame our parents, I became the target of her frustration. Over time, the tension between Mindy and me intensified. What started as small disagreements turned into increasingly frequent and intense fights. Mindy began attacking me with comments about my appearance, making hurtful remarks about my hair, my weight, or anything she could think of. One of her favorite pastimes was comparing our physical features. She would mockingly point out how I supposedly looked like our father, which made me less attractive than her. She would say things like, "Well, you inherited Dad's nose and shoulders, so it is no surprise you look so masculine for a woman." It was a painful comparison, as I had never had issues with my body image until then. No matter how many times I asked her to stop, she always found something new to criticize. One day, I made a casual comment in front of my mother and Mindy about how my old jeans no longer fit. It was nothing important, just an observation about how my body had changed over time. My mother, being understanding, assured me that it was perfectly normal for our bodies to change as women and that I should not worry. But Mindy saw this as an opportunity to attack me. With a mocking smile, she laughed and said, "Well, you are starting to look like a pig. Maybe this is a sign that you should move your fat, and start exercising more." That comment affected me deeply. I remember feeling like I had been punched in the stomach. My mother immediately scolded her for being so mean, but even though my mom defended me, Mindy's words stayed with me. It was not that I was overweight or unhealthy, but hearing something like that from my own younger sister affected me in a way that is hard to explain. Eventually, I decided that enough was enough. I set out to start exercising, not to prove anything to her, but for myself. I wanted to feel stronger and healthier, and I thought that maybe exercise would also help clear my mind. So I started doing lightweight training at home and began running every morning. As I got more involved day by day, I realized how much I enjoyed it. I was no longer exercising because of what Mindy had said. I loved the sense of accomplishment that came with getting stronger and improving my endurance. It became something I looked forward to, a positive outlet for all the negative emotions I had been carrying. Looking back, I am glad I made that decision because one morning during one of my regular runs I met my boyfriend, who is now my husband. From the beginning, Richard and I bonded over our shared love of staying active. And what started as casual conversations during our runs turned into something much deeper. I enjoyed running with him every day and I felt much safer. Meeting him was one of the best things that ever happened to me, and it would not have happened if I had not decided to start taking better care of myself. When Richard and I started dating, and things started to get more serious between us, my parents were delighted to see me so happy, and they genuinely liked him. They could tell he was a good guy and that I was falling deeply in love with him. I admit that before meeting Richard, I had only dated one guy, so I did not have much experience. However, my relationship with Richard felt really natural and uncomplicated. But as expected, Mindy found a way to create problems. She would see me come home excited and happy after spending time with Richard, and instead of being happy for me, she would say things like, "You should not get so happy, he is probably just using you." Or, "You do not have as much dating experience as I do, so do not get ahead of yourself, you are getting too serious and needy." It was as if she could not stand to see me happy, especially with someone like Richard. I could tell she wanted to make me feel insecure about my relationship, as if I did not deserve someone like him. But the reality was that Richard was nothing like what she implied. From the start, he was genuinely in love with me, always kept his word, treated me with respect, and made it clear that he saw a future with me. I felt safe and loved with him, and I never doubted his intentions. So I paid no attention to Mindy's words. After months of dating, Richard came to my parents' house to officially meet the whole family. It was a big step. I was a little nervous but mostly excited. My parents were very welcoming as expected, and seemed to like him immediately. They saw how much he cared for me, and that was all they needed to approve of him. It was a great evening overall except for Mindy. I expected that maybe she would make some mean comments about me in front of him like she used to, but instead she was strangely very flirty with Richard. She made comments about how good he looked or laughed too much at his jokes. At one point, she even touched his arm during their conversation, which made Richard feel incredibly uncomfortable. He even moved his chair slightly away from her. I looked at my parents to see if they had noticed Mindy's behavior, but they seemed oblivious. To be honest, I had always known that Mindy acted a certain way around boys. She had this habit of batting her eyelashes, using a softer and more feminine voice, and generally performing to get their attention. I was not surprised when she did it with guys in the past, but this time was different. This was Richard, my boyfriend, and I did not expect her to cross that line. I could not shake the unease I felt about how she had behaved that night, so after Richard left, I decided to bring it up to my parents. I explained how Mindy had been acting strangely around Richard all night, but to my surprise, they completely dismissed it. My mother even joked, almost laughing about the situation, and said something like, "Come on. It is cute that your little sister has a harmless crush on Richard. That probably just means she also trusts him." I was shocked by her reaction, especially from my mother. It was as if she did not see anything wrong with Mindy's behavior. For her, it was nothing, but for me, it was so much more than that. It was a boundary violation, and it made me uncomfortable to see my younger sister blatantly flirting with my boyfriend. Since my parents were not going to address the issue, I decided to confront Mindy myself. However, when I asked her why she was touching my boyfriend's arms, she acted all innocent and clueless, as if she had no idea what she was doing. She told me she did not mean anything by it, that she just thought Richard was really cute. She told me he looked too good for me. I shook my head and told her that her actions were not only uncomfortable for me, but also creepy, and even Richard had noticed how weird she was acting around him. I told her she had no right to behave like a stalker toward him. When she heard this, her face turned bright red, and I could tell my words had struck a nerve. Instead of apologizing or trying to explain further, she looked furious and ran off to her room, slamming the door behind her. It was clear I had embarrassed her, but I did not regret confronting her. I was not going to let her undermine my relationship with Richard, or make me feel insecure. After that incident, I became more cautious with my sister and stopped bringing Richard to the house. He also admitted that he did not feel very comfortable around Mindy. Later, when it was time to go to college, he and I had been accepted into universities that were about an hour apart from each other. It was a bit sad to be in a long-distance relationship, however. He assured me that we would make it work, and I believed him. Mindy told me before I left for college that I should not have expectations with Richard, and that men love to cheat once they are in college. Fortunately, despite her comments, Richard and I made our long-distance relationship work. We talked every day, made plans to see each other when we could, and stayed close even though we were miles apart. One day, Richard mentioned during one of our calls that Mindy had sent him a friend request on Facebook. He accepted the request without thinking much of it since she was my sister, so it was not entirely unexpected. But immediately after, Mindy started sending him messages. Richard told me about it right away because he thought it was strange, especially considering that Mindy had not been in touch with me since I left for college. She had not even called or texted me once. If my mother ever tried to get her to talk to me, Mindy would start yelling that she did not want to talk. Now suddenly she was messaging my boyfriend. Did not make sense. A few days after our conversation, Richard came to visit me at college as he usually did, and that is when he showed me all the messages she had been sending him. I reviewed them and saw that there was not a single reply from him, but she kept sending him messages every day. She would send him messages like "Good morning, handsome," or "Good night, thinking of you," with a heart emoji even though he never responded. In addition to that, I noticed she had started commenting on some of his posts, sometimes calling him handsome, or leaving a rose emoji. It was getting to be too much, and both Richard and I agreed that something had to be done. So with Richard by my side, I decided to call Mindy and confront her. Without beating around the bush, I asked her why she had been sending messages to Richard behind my back. At first she tried to downplay it, saying she just wanted to see how he was doing, but that excuse did not work on me. I told her directly that she had no right to message my boyfriend like that, and that if she really wanted to know about him, she could have done it through me. There was no reason for her to act behind my back in that way. I told her she was acting like a stalker by sending him multiple messages, even though he was clearly ignoring her. I made it clear that Richard was going to remove her from his account, and that if she ever bothered him again, I would not hesitate to send all the messages and comments to our parents and cousins. I wanted her to understand how inappropriate she was being, and that if she wanted to keep acting like a weirdo by messaging her older sister's boyfriend, then she could explain herself to the whole family. At that point, she started defending her actions, giving me excuses that it was not a big deal, and that Richard probably did not mind receiving her messages, and that he must be lying to me by saying he felt uncomfortable. I reminded her again that this was her final warning. I did not want things to escalate more than they already had, so I told her that if she respected me even a little bit, she would stop immediately. Fortunately, Richard supported me throughout all of this, and after that conversation, he removed her from his account right away and seemed almost relieved to be done with it, since he also found her behavior very strange. It felt like a necessary step to prevent her toxic behavior from seeping into our relationship. As you can imagine, after the whole situation with Richard, the already strained relationship between Mindy and me deteriorated even further. Although she never tried to contact Richard again after that confrontation, it was clear she held resentment toward me. Every time I came home during college breaks, she refused to acknowledge my presence. It was as if I did not exist to her, and any trace of sisterly relationship between us completely vanished. My parents noticed the change, but they really did not intervene. My mother, in her usual way of minimizing things, even after learning everything, dismissed it by saying that sister fights are normal, and that Mindy would eventually grow up and get over her harmless crush on Richard. She seemed convinced this was just a phase and that eventually Mindy and I would reconcile. But we never did. Time passed, I graduated from college, Richard and I remained strong, and after years of making our long-distance relationship work, we finally moved in together. Life seemed to be falling into place. We had our separate careers, but we supported each other through all the ups and downs. Then one day, Richard completely surprised me by proposing marriage. It was one of the most emotional moments of my life. I could not believe we had been through so much together, and now we were taking this next step. Our parents were delighted, and we started planning the wedding. My mother, still clinging to the hope that we could mend our relationship, insisted that I include Mindy in the wedding. She convinced me to ask her to be a bridesmaid, even though I had serious reservations about it. But when I asked Mindy to be a bridesmaid, she flatly refused. She offered no explanation. In addition to that, she refused to come to my wedding. Our parents also tried to intervene, but Mindy stood firm in her decision. To be honest, I felt a bit relieved that she did not attend the wedding, because I no longer had to worry about unnecessary drama. So I let it go. 6 years passed and I had no contact with Mindy. Life went on and she rarely crossed my mind. That was until about 7 months ago when my husband, Richard, casually mentioned one afternoon that he had just found out that his cousin Harry had posted a photo on social media with his new girlfriend, and to his surprise, that girl was none other than my sister Mindy. He showed me the photo and I could not believe what I was seeing. The idea that Mindy was dating someone from Richard's family caught me completely off guard. I did not even know they were in the same circles, much less that they had met and were now dating. My immediate reaction was to wonder if this was some kind of intentional move by Mindy. After everything that had happened between us, and especially her strange fixation on Richard in the past, I could not shake the feeling that there was something more to this. Feeling that I needed clarity, I decided to contact Harry directly. We had always had a good relationship, so I felt comfortable enough to ask him what was going on. When I mentioned Mindy, Harry told me that apparently they had met at a gym months earlier and hit it off right away. He seemed genuinely in love with her. I tried to keep the conversation light, but I had to ask the obvious question. Did he know that Mindy was my sister? He admitted that he found out a few days later, although Mindy had explicitly asked him not to mention her to me at all, so he never reached out to me or Richard. That was a big red flag for me. Why would she deliberately want to keep her relationship with Harry a secret from us? At that point, I felt like I had no choice but to tell Harry the truth about my strained relationship with Mindy. I explained everything, the years of resentment, the way she had crossed boundaries with Richard, and why I had ultimately cut off all contact with her. I told him about the strange obsession she seemed to have with Richard back then, and how uncomfortable she had made us both feel. I did not hold back because I felt that Harry deserved to know exactly why this situation was so strange for me. I hoped he would at least understand my concerns or be willing to listen with an open mind. But instead, Harry got defensive. He seemed genuinely upset that I brought all of this up. He argued that Mindy had been very kind to him, and that I was probably making things up or exaggerating past events. He refused to believe my words, and I was left feeling frustrated and hurt. Later, when my husband found out about my conversation with Harry, he was also upset. He told me angrily that I should not have interfered in their relationship since it was not our business. I tried to explain that my intentions were to protect Harry and make sure he was aware of Mindy's history and the potential problems. I genuinely wanted him to be safe and avoid getting hurt, but Richard firmly told me that I should learn to accept their true love since Harry seemed genuinely happy with her. He also told me that maybe Mindy had changed after all these years, and we should give her the benefit of the doubt. Despite my reservations about Mindy, for Richard's sake, I agreed to step back. In these last few months after the revelation on social media, Harry and Mindy have been dating more openly. Our parents, although initially uncomfortable with the whole situation, have chosen to believe Harry's claim that it was all just a coincidence that he met Mindy at the gym. Richard and I, however, have kept our distance from them and rarely attend family gatherings. This past weekend, Harry invited us to his housewarming party and insisted that we come. Apparently, he had decided to move in with Mindy. Richard and I were hesitant at first about attending, but we did not want to cause a division in the family by declining, so we reluctantly agreed to go. When we arrived at the party, things felt strange right away. Harry, completely in love, was practically bouncing around telling everyone how he and Mindy were meant for each other. He seemed so cheerful, so hopelessly in love. But Mindy was indifferent and almost uninterested in him. I caught her looking at Richard once or twice, but she never came over to talk to us. As the evening went on, I could see that Mindy was drinking more and more compared to the other guests. At one point, Richard excused himself to go to the bathroom, and that is when Mindy found her opportunity to be alone with him. Apparently, she followed him there and tried to start a conversation. According to Richard, she seemed determined to talk to him privately, But he firmly told her that anything she had to say could be said in front of me, and that is when Mindy, already quite drunk, began confessing her feelings to Richard, right there in the hallway. With her voice slurred from alcohol, she told him she had always been in love with him and had done everything she could to be close to him. Her voice grew louder and more frantic as she accused him of choosing me when she claimed to be the prettier one. Her loud outbursts could be heard by some of the guests. I stood up from my seat, but before I could even react, Harry rushed over to see what was going on. Unfortunately, he also heard Mindy's confession to Richard loud and clear. I could see the shock and pain on his face as the truth came out. The room felt heavy with tension, with people whispering, unsure how to react to the drama unfolding in front of them. Richard, as always, handled it with grace. He simply told Mindy that it was inappropriate for her to say those things, and that whatever feelings she had did not matter because he had always been in love with me. That only seemed to enrage her more, and she began sobbing uncontrollably. Harry then tried to take Mindy away from everyone to prevent her from embarrassing herself further. Eventually, Richard and I decided it was best to leave the party. The tension was too strong, and it was clear that nothing good would come from staying any longer. Later, we learned that after we left, Harry and Mindy had a massive fight in front of everyone. According to reports, it was total chaos. Mindy, in a drunken rage, threw plates and glasses at Harry, while he tried to dodge her attacks and kept demanding to know why she was in love with Richard. I am sure it must have been a horrible experience for everyone present. Harry's parents soon contacted me after the incident. They were upset and wanted to discuss what had happened. I reiterated everything I had previously told Harry. Mindy had always had a strange obsession with my husband, even though Richard had never shown interest in her, and she probably befriended Harry with that intention. I told them they needed to talk to Harry and make him see the truth. Today, I received another call from Harry's parents. It turns out that after talking things through with his parents, Harry tried to reason with Mindy, but as expected, she did not take his decision well. In her anger, Mindy began destroying his apartment, throwing things, scratching Harry's car, and even spreading glitter everywhere as a form of revenge. Then she packed up and left, leaving behind a mess that Harry now had to deal with since only his name was on the lease. Harry's parents were understandably furious and demanded that I contact my sister immediately, as she was not answering any of their calls. They also demanded that I make Mindy pay for all the damages. I reiterated that I would try, but that I doubted she would even answer my calls. Upon hearing this, his parents began threatening legal action, stating that if I did not make sure she covered the costs, they would sue both her and me. I was shocked by their reaction. I tried to explain that I had no control over Mindy's actions, and that I had already warned both them and Harry about her behavior. Harry's mother responded that I should have done a better job warning them and that since she is my sister, I should also be responsible for the damage. Am I the bad one for not warning Harry and his parents enough? Should I have done more? Update 1. I am surprised how quickly my post went viral. When Richard got home from work, we talked about all of this, and he promised that he would talk to his family to sort out the situation. He asked me not to worry, reminding me that I have no legal responsibility for what my sister does. He also apologized to me for not believing me earlier when I tried to warn him about the concerning signs I saw in the relationship between my sister and his cousin. To clarify for many, my husband has never had any kind of romantic relationship with my sister. They have never been alone together. If something had happened between them, I am sure my sister would not have kept it a secret until now. She would have made it public a long time ago. About Mindy, I am not sure if she is really in love with my husband. I think her obsession has more to do with our lifelong insecurities and our rivalry as sisters. Her inappropriate behavior toward him seems more like a way to compete with me and ruin my happiness. It is sad to see how my own sister has become the one who most seeks to hurt me. Update 2. My parents have decided to take responsibility for all the damage Mindy caused. Apparently, after her breakup with Harry, she went crying to my parents' house and has been staying with them these past few days. When I told them everything Mindy had done to Harry's apartment, they immediately contacted Harry and his parents to apologize. They were very upset with Mindy and agreed to pay for all the necessary repairs. Mindy is lucky that Harry decided not to press charges against her. Harry's parents called me to apologize for how they treated me before. They admitted that they had reacted without thinking, and that they did not mean it. I have decided to accept their apologies because I understand how bad they must have felt after what my sister did. Update 3. It has been a month since my last update. For those asking what happened with Mindy and whether she had to face any consequences for her actions, my father has given her an ultimatum. She has 1 month to find her own place and move out of my parents' house. My sister has never held a stable job and has always been financially dependent on our parents or her boyfriends, so it will be interesting to see how she handles this. My mother has finally stopped justifying Mindy's behavior and seems to have had enough of the situation. My parents are truly disappointed, especially after having to pay thousands of dollars to Harry for the damage she caused. As for us, Richard and I are doing well. I feel very at peace knowing that my sister will no longer be part of Richard's family,